The COVID virus and the lockdowns around the world heavily impacted lots, if not most people. Work hours have diminished, people have stuck at home a lot more, and a few interesting things have happened. We've seen some interesting moves on the stock market, and people finally have this extra free time where their commitments are no longer as they were. Maybe they were working many hours a day, full time, and all the errands and things I have to do at home, take care of the kids, whatever it may be. We now find ourselves with more time at home, and a lot of people are using this opportunity to think about business endeavors, or finally pursuing them if they've been wanting to for all these years, as well as stock moves and things like that. So the video that I wanted to cover today is how I went about leaving my job. I used to work at a supermarket, and we'll go through the steps of how I got there, starting my own business, what exactly it was, the struggles that I have. And with my videos in this channel, I always want to follow the theme of giving you guys 3 takeaways, 3 points summarized into what you can do to add it into your own mentality or methods to either grow your own business, or if it's stock moves or whatever it may be. 3 takeaways that I think will help, or could help, many people out there. So we have to rewind a little bit and go back to when I was in university at the age of 18. I was in a small town called Mildura in Victoria, Australia. If you're watching in the United States, you can Google it and you can see where it is. Down the bottom of the country, small town, grew up with bushland over the road and dirt bikes and all that stuff there. I then had to desert all of my family and all my friends that I knew, except for one that also came to university with me, and we ended up being roommates, across interstate to a brand new world, a city to go, not a big city at that though, but a city nonetheless, go to university, which I stayed there for 2 years. Now, it was mechanical engineering, so it was pretty full on, and I found myself 2 years in at a mid-year exam kind of lead up, the 2 weeks before it, looking around the room, and I just couldn't focus. I just pushed myself to a point where I do not enjoy what I was doing so much that my body was almost, my brain had enough. It was checking out, and it was for the full week. So there's 2 weeks until the exam, the full last week lead up, actually, I believe it was. And I remember I'm sitting there, we're in a big study group of the people that were in my class and things like that. I remember there was a big room, big open room. I looked up at the clock to the left. This is the one image I have in my mind really, really clearly. And we'd only been there for an hour. It was meant to be a 3 or 4 hour, like, big chunk of study to be done for engineering mathematics, which was very, very difficult. And it was at that time that I considered, you know what, I don't think I'll continue on with this after exams, or I think I might pull the plug. So I ended up calling my mum at that night, and she said, look, she's very supportive in this ways, and she's always very supportive with my endeavors and what I wanted to do, so I was always very grateful for that. But she said, look, just do your mid-year exams, you then have your 2 weeks holiday or whatever it may have been, and then you can have a think about what you want to do. And that was a perfect plan. So did my exams, didn't go that well because I hadn't studied that well for it. And then I went back, kind of refreshed my mind a bit, went back into class 2 weeks later. It was the first class I sat down for signals and systems, which, mind you, was just another mathematics with a different name. I think there was a bit of physics even mended in there. So every single class of mechanical engineering, you knew that when you sat down, opened the book, it's the same thing. It's math or physics or them combined. And there was a pop quiz thing, and I looked at this page, and the same sensation was there. And I knew that was it. So I was in the room for 10 minutes, tried to do some of the questions, decided, you know what, I think that's about it. I stood up and I walked out the room, and that was the last session, the last classroom that I've ever been in, I believe. So moving forward, then I was in a rough spot. So 6 months where I had to kind of sort something out. So I had a job at Woolworths that I got. And before that, actually, also in the lead up for uni, it was really tough because there was 1 week I didn't work because full-time engineering was super hard. So my mum, where she could, would send me $50 or whatever to get me through the week. And I did have my rent covered, which was nice. But my family always struggled a bit with financial, like being able to handle money in a good way. So it's one thing that I really, really have stuck with and learned and seen things what you shouldn't do. So I learned a lot from my family and like upbringing and things, but not all of it was a good point. But that's just one of those things. You can always find positives in negatives. So I've learned for myself things that I should and probably shouldn't do. But there was a week before I ended uni, in the last 6 months, probably even throughout the whole thing, but I remember this one specific week, there was $1.37 in my account. The tough point, and also probably led to me leaving my university, but there was 4 days where I had nothing but noodles and the standard university diet in the fridge. So with all that combined, left uni, I knew, okay, time to get a job, time to really use this time to work out what I want to do, but either way, I'm gonna have to add some hours into it and save up some money, and I did. So I was doing part-time contract at Woolworths, Australian supermarket, and full-time hours sometimes, but not always, so it was a bit hit and miss, between 20 and kind of 34, or even up to 38. What was it, max? 37, 38? Anyway, and it was there for probably 3 months. And I saw some marketing material for a Institute of Personal Trainers. They do a lot of the courses and certifications and stuff like that. So while working around my supermarket job, which was starting to get my nerves a little bit. I used to work out the back, which was all fine, but you'd get kind of manipulated a little bit, and they would cut everyone's hours at the front so much it was just the bare minimum, but then an influx of people would come in, and guess who would have to step up and do 2 jobs at once. We'd stop what we're doing at the back, we'd get called to the checkout. I started working at Woolworths, knowing I very well did not want to work at a checkout, but it's something that I found myself at every single shift that I was doing. So all that in mind, things are pretty cruisy though. I've finally got I've worked off and on. It's my first permanent role, and you know that there's people that I'm working with that have been there for 2 decades and are still going. So even though I knew it was a stepping stone, it was still my first proper job that was continuous. This course came up and I decided to pursue it, and I actually got a diploma within 6 months, and they don't even offer things like this anymore, but I had to remember every bone, every muscle, testing, and the diploma difference between a certificate, other than making you sound cooler, is that you handle a bit more of certain injuries and disabilities, if I believe correctly, that we go into. But yeah, it's above certificate 3 and 4, you've got your diploma. From there, I was working on the side as a personal trainer because the mentor for the class was actually scouting for 2 male personal trainers for his own small private studio, which I had no idea. At the time, I was heavily into bodybuilding and I was getting ready for a competition, but I was working nightfall at the same time. So I would be at Woolworths until midnight, get home at 12:30, bed by 1 or 1:30 or 2 by the time you wind down and everything, and cook and have dinner. And then I would be up at 6:37 and had to be at class by 9. And it was very, very rough. I was destroyed, coffees and energy drinks with me at all times to try and get through the mornings, even though it was only 4 hours. But I was having a lot of trouble with sleep deprivation, and sometimes I'd actually have just had my head on the desk. Never fell asleep in class. Well, who really knows if you do fall asleep or not, but from what I know, never really fell asleep. But for whatever reason, the mentor was impressed by me and one of my friends now in the class. So maybe of how we handled ourselves when it come to the assessment criteria, or just maybe how we may have been good with communication and explaining with how to do things. Because there's one thing that I took away from that mentor, and I still have some work related to that man as well, but he said the best trainers can explain everything perfectly and get the client to understand without touching them. If you can do it verbally, you can explain yourself so clearly and so well that you can help people do the exercise and correct it as they go without having to use your hands and push them into position and stuff like that, then you're probably a pretty good communicator / personal trainer. And that's one thing that stuck with me. I like to think that it is one of the strengths of how I handle my business and what helped me to grow as a full-time personal trainer down the track. Spoilers all over this video, you know where it ends up. So part-time night shift Woolworths paired with early 6 a.m. sessions started to get really bad on the health. Sleep was broken, getting rough, caffeine abuse started coming into the equation, and I knew that Woolworths was coming to an end. There were some nights that were pretty bad also there. It was so tedious, the work was so late, and I hated getting called up to checkout. I just knew that I had so much more to bring to the table. I wanted to help people in some way or another, and the work was really, really kind of killing me inside. So there were some really dark nights where you just get into a bad headspace. You're by yourself in an aisle straightening up cans of tin tuna. And so there was probably 2 weeks before I quit, 2 nights in a row that were really, really just wanted to kind of just leave and just walk away or go to the bathroom or whatever. But 2 weeks later, hand in my resignation letter. But it come that time again, only 2 years later, I actually ended up working at Woolworths, where I knew my time was done. It was the same sensation that I had at university. I believe if you've had a few different jobs throughout your career, then you probably have had the same kind of feeling. They might not always be the same, some more nerves attached to others, more so than some, but the same sensation of both excitement because you want to find out what's the next chapter, but also you're losing your foundation. It's a bit scary here because what is the next step? You don't always know if it's going to go to plan. And that was one thing with personal training, is that from what I was doing, it was only part-time. No, not even part-time. It was only casual hours. I just invoiced the business as I would train the clients that were handed to me. But it was definitely not enough to cover the bills and do it full-time from those hours that I was doing. So I knew that as soon as I pulled out from Woolworths here, the supermarket job, my safety net, the one that's paying the bills, that it's all in. And it was at this time that I actually started listening to Gary Vaynerchuk and different podcasts, and because sometimes, depending on who the boss was, we could have an earphone in as we were doing the work. So that did lead me to finally say, you know what? It's time to dive in. I'm not sure how this is going to go, but I know that I'm not going to be complacent and sit around for the rest of my life doing something that makes me so miserable. So I pulled out of university first, pulled out of Woolworths later on, and went head on in to working for a big box gym, big corporate chain that have a system where you pay them rent, which is a lot, $320 per week. So you have to make that minimum to pay for the rent before you can even worry about paying for your own expenses and bills. And I just knew that I probably could pull it off and dived into it. So the first 3 months was difficult. I was actually losing money because the rent slowly creeps up every 2 weeks. So it's like just as you're trying to work everything out, you're a personal trainer, there's so many members, there's 4,500 members in the gym, and there's all these things happening, and there's so much to learn, and it's hard. You start getting clients, and then it would step up. So it was like I was always chasing my feet, always chasing my tail, trying to make it to the next 2 weeks, if that makes sense. And finally, after 12 weeks, the induction period had been removed. I'm back to full rent, and I was just exceeding it. I think I was exceeding it by $50 or whatever it may have been. And then from there, it builds up because the costs stop, but if you put in and you can grow your business, starts to climb. And over the next 2 years, that's exactly what happened. So the first year, I really found myself and developed some strategies. And breaking away the story, if you do want to kind of pursue your own thing, maybe you're sick of your own job, but you've just never really known how to go about getting into a different position, you need to ask yourself, what do you enjoy somewhat, at least? What do you know you have skills in or could help some people? It doesn't have to be everyone. You don't have to be the best in the world. I'm certainly not the best trainer in the world, but I always strive to learn more and more, and I think that's one of the big foundations of business. But the first point of this video is, what do you enjoy, and is your skill set within this mixture something you can do that's semi-proven? Because a lot of people, when it comes to business, they think that, I need to invent the next Coca-Cola. I need to make this product that's never been seen or done before, and bang, and a sales kind of business like that, with no branding, and you can't just launch it like that without huge funding behind it in order to spread the word and get the right idea into everyone's mind. So what's something that's semi-proven? The more competition isn't always the worst thing, because it means it's working. And that's one thing, if you are a personal trainer as well, that don't be scared to go to a gym or work in a gym, if you did have the choice, that has a lot of personal trainers, because chances are that will give you more business, because more clientele will see that personal training is a normal thing and will be more inclined to do it. Sure, they might one might grow more than the other. If they have a big class and they look more popular and more successful, people might tend to go to them. But in general, people are sheep in this world. So if they see that one gym has no personal trainers or only has one or two, and it's not this normal thing, well then they're probably not going to want to do it themselves, whereas they would be pushed to do so, or be a bit more open to it in a gym where personal training and whatever business it is that you want is seen and normal and, you know, very adapted for everyone. So either way, getting back to the point, what is it that you enjoy? Does your skill set match it? They don't have to kind of go together, but they can, and if they do, then you're very well off. And then if you can, go to something that's kind of semi-proven. Like if you know that you are a good welder, you used to work for a welding firm, well then you could make your own products at home. Like if you enjoy gardening, you have this crazy beautiful garden in the backyard of your house and you always like to check it every night or sit out by it with your coffee in the morning, you actually enjoy gardening, then there's plenty of gardeners around. You know that it's a business that is somewhat successful. You don't have to go and launch the next Nike or Coca-Cola or some new business or start an electronics business or something dodgy. You can do things like that, like start a gardening thing, or it doesn't have to be super crazy, and just it'll give you the skills in order to do more crazy things down the road. You'll learn so much, and that's the biggest thing when it comes to business, learning so much. So can you do something that's semi-proven? So with that first point out the way, tying into the kind of timeline of my own life up until this point, kind of did something that was semi-proven, that I knew I enjoyed. I loved working out, and I knew I had knowledge in it because I was already helping some of my friends in our sessions with certain things. Even though I didn't have a qualification back then, you know, just nice little tips here and there. And I'm like, why be working in a situation like the supermarket where I care little about? I'm not helping anyone except for the boss to hit his quota and things like that. And it was making me miserable when I can work in an environment that I enjoy. I do it in my free time, and I'll be helping people and getting paid for it. So that was what I did, launched it, started growing. And now we're going to lead into the second point. And I feel it's with business, with anything it is that you do, you need to create brand. Now that word in itself, you've probably heard a lot. And what does it actually mean? It's so broad. Like, create brand. What do you mean? That's not advice. Well, it is, but it leaves you so open to not knowing what the next step is. So one thing that I found that kind of some other personal trainers struggled with their growth and things, whereas I seem to climb very rapidly. I think within the actual gym of the 20 personal trainers we had, that I had the best growth of that period. I think the ones that had already been there 3 years grew a lot easier in the Kickstarter system, the lead generation system that they had. Sounds like it was pretty cruisy back then. I think what separated me from a lot of other struggling trainers was the fact that I was really focused on the branding as a whole. It's this thing that I've heard a lot from different podcasts and things. But whereas some people viewed it as people come in, some of these trainers, and then I'm going to give them a good workout and then get money for it in a simple exchange like that. But there's so much more to it. There's so much more passion when it comes to business. Like, it's something you're growing, and people that own big businesses and know this will say, in quote, that it's like a child. Like, you want it to grow and prosper and look after it and do everything you can in order to see it succeed. So it's kind of the mentality I was going in with. I would make sure that I had like this systematic approach. So I would, this actually leads into our third tip as well for this video, and one of the best things I think you can take away from this content here. So I took a good amount of time after hours, not only after perfecting my craft, but in the way that it was presented. So there was different systems. Okay, you'd normally like have an introductory session, give them a program, and then the last one I would blast them. You didn't have to do this. This is kind of how I made my method of trying to recruit people. And I'd make sure all my paperwork was the same. It was laid out in smart ways, and I would just kind of break it down into making sure that it was the same color scheme, my logo, and the way that I presented myself and communicated with people and kind of displayed myself around the gym was to build brand. So building brand, in my mind, and what I think the way you should kind of take it in is, how can you be known? How can you, when you have a brand, like Toyota cars. Everyone knows what Toyota cars is. Everyone knows what in the local building city scene of yours, there might be a house builder that's quite good and they do good work and they put their effort into it, and naturally, organically, maybe not always organically, maybe they've done some marketing, but they build this brand out of it. So I kind of adapted myself in that way, whereas the way I would display myself and making sure I'm always neat and not looking dodgy. And there's people wearing a lot of colourful socks and stuff lately. It's one of these themes where it might be cool and it might be part of your brand, and that's great. But just for the short-term giggles, is it in 5 years' time going to be something that you look fondly about, or do you think maybe it didn't look good for your brand? Okay, so you need to, when you're at work, when you're doing your own business, you're not representing yourself anymore, you're representing this whole brand. Everything you've done until this stage is represented by whatever you do next. And that's not to stress you out, but it's to think a bit more strategically. So the paperwork was very neat, laid out, branding and colors all the same, and it was pretty simple to follow. You didn't overload them and confuse them with too many options, and it was concise and got to the point. They sign on the back and everything like that. And then out of my own kind of involvement, there was no need to do this. I would get them to record what they eat and drink for 2 days. So I wasn't just selling. My brand wasn't just helping people with their workout. It was more of this full thing, because there's a lot more to getting in shape and feeling good about yourself than just coming in for a workout for half an hour or an hour once per week or whatever it may be. So how can you package everything as a brand? So for instance, another part of this branding thing that you'll probably, like if you've got your mind focused on it, you'll probably find that this happens, and you'll come up with little tricks and things like that because you're more focused on not getting the job done only, but building the brand as a whole. So for instance, a nice trick, not a trick, but just a strategic thing that I bet you no other trainer in that room probably even thought about, was the fact that there's this big cardiovascular section that everyone does their treadmill on, where they come in, maybe they're shy, they just come in, they do their treadmill, Stairmaster, and they will go home, or they do so before the big group fitness classes works out. Well, I would train my clients, not all the time, but sometimes, in front of them on purpose. The clientele that I thought were confident and, not going to be, I'm not manipulating, because again, building brand, you want to keep your clientele happy, but also be doing strategic things with the way you present yourself, your product, and how you're representing it to every other person in the room. So by training people in front of those others that were just sitting there doing cardiovascular work, they would notice and see that how fun it would be, how involved it is. And here I'm creating brand. I'm being known as that trainer that always looks like he knows what he's doing and things like that, and has this whole package in one to go. So just little things will come to mind. If you do have a gardening business, we'll go back to that. The way that your car's presented. Where do you park it when you're not working? If you go to the supermarket in it, are you parking in a good position where it is? Is like the colors a good theme? So how can you create this brand, both in the way that you display yourself and represent it, but also all the little tips and things you can do here and there that all add to create this wonderful circle of momentum. So that long-winded point is step 2. The third and final takeaway I want you to have from this video, before I get into kind of the nitty-gritty details of what happened with my business, some of the struggles I had, some of the successes that I had at the end, I'm going to get this final point across so you can kind of get it, sink it in, and maybe run off if you're not going to make it to the end of the video and start your own business there, as long as you took something away from this video. The third point, it ties in well with the second one, is being aware. Okay, so we're making this brand, we're doing everything as this package that we're displaying to the world and the way that you represent yourself and the brand. Being aware. Now, people get very, very complacent. The big brands don't. Like, think if you are the owner of Coca-Cola, you're the owner of Pepsi, sure, Microsoft, whatever it is, you've built this big brand, you normally have a board of people that help you. But the one thing that will destroy businesses is when they get complacent. Sometimes you can't always help this. Sometimes your heart's not in it, and which is why it's always important to go back to step 1, or the takeaway 1 is What do you enjoy and what do you have skills in? Because if you're doing something that's not organic, is not something you truly believe in, then this can backfire back down here. So being aware, you don't want to be complacent because businesses will crash and burn if you're not always being aware of where you can improve and kind of critically assessing your own business. So being aware, what do I mean? What features of your business or operation can you improve on? So I briefly mentioned that I had a systematic approach to new leads that were coming in as a personal trainer. First session I had, and it was generally the same, I would tweak it just for these individual people. So it's almost robotic, but I'm still offering that personalized service. So I didn't ever get confused and it looked very smooth in the way that it went. So I'd meet the person, present myself and my brand in a confident manner, sit down, ask them how they are, and the caring things you do as a human. Then the first operation is, okay, we're going to go through the lead up. We're going to do a body scan. We're going to ask them about their goals, try and get them to really open up to us so we can help them the best by giving us the most information. Just as you should do with any business. It's really caring about the thing. If you have a gardening business, we'll go back to it. Understand a bit more if you can why their garden means so much to them, what they really want. Okay? And then you can really appeal to higher end clientele as well down the line. But getting back to it, critical thinking of the different sections of your business. So the first session, I would always go to a certain room, introduce them to basic exercises because I knew I wanted to build their confidence and not just throw stupid stuff at them straight away. I've seen people try and show their clients and they work on deadlift and barbell squats straight away and they're definitely not an advanced lifter. To me, that was just a bit cringy in the business aspect of things. There's no methodology to it. They weren't ever critical of their own business, even though they've been doing it for years. They never thought outside of the box in their own time. So being aware, first section I would do that. The second one was the very simple program. I'd give them 2 different workouts actually that would tie in nicely with my third session. They're very basic, but it gave them something to do in their own time. And then the third one, I would really blast them. Now this is where I've been paying attention to what they want to do, and I'd make sure that they get a good burn, especially in the first session as well, of if they wanted to work on their tummy, they wanted to trim up, well, you make sure their abs burn. Even though it's not always associated with that, you can't work your biceps or triceps to lose fat there. But as long as they get a burn there, it doesn't really matter in their mind because they know that it's doing something and that it's working, and I've been listening to their goals. So leading into the third one, push them a little bit, give them a good workout. By this time, I've built my brand with them. We have a good kind of connection going on. And then you would go into the close, I guess you'll call it at the end, even though I don't like to treat it as a sales, because if you have that in mind, then it's probably, it runs off business. You need clients to do it, but if you're not actively trying to help them the most, then you're not being critical of your business. You're just being, you're going for the short-term gain, and the short-term gain will always fail compared to long-term success. So going to the last one, I would have kind of this initial opening way, because it's a little bit nerve-wracking to try and say, okay, now you should probably do this and it's going to cost this much, because you've just been working with them up until this stage with the 3 sessions that they paid you nothing for. It was part of the gym's introductory thing. And I guess the biggest part of me being aware of my own systematic approach to things was this last session. Now, this one took me a year to get right, I think, because one, you had to have your everything displayed really nicely, so branding comes into this, but also two, the way that you the next paragraph you say out loud can make or break the situation. So you want it to be pretty spot on, and you don't want to show any signs of uncomfortableness, because then it gets a bit awkward and stuff like that. That's one thing I had to work out a little bit. So if you're a bit of a shy person, then maybe this one will help you the most as well. So I found that sometimes it was hard to kind of get out the points I wanted to do, because you just want to help these people, but now you're asking for that give back, that you want to get paid now. So sitting down, one thing that I found was sometimes I wasn't confident straight to the point of why they should do this, and wasn't that good at explaining or getting across the communication of how this is actually going to help them the most. And if they don't work with you, you know that they're not going to get as good as progress as they could have done elsewhere or by themselves. And that's not the thing. Like, you can definitely get good progress by yourself, but don't have the mentality or the ego of, I don't need a personal trainer, I know how to work out, because humans work better with that push. Even if a personal trainer is standing there just assessing your posture, you're going to work harder than if you didn't have one there. Okay, so it just depends whether or not, if you is money more important to you or that progress. And so for some people, money is very not an issue. So one thing was kind of fixing up the pitch, we'll call it. I had to change that a few times and had to kind of rehearse it in my head as I was walking down, which was a good tip for me, which I was only able to associate into my business once I was critical of the way I was doing and I knew where I was going wrong. So I kind of rehearsed what I was going to say, would sit down, I'd go through it, bang, 50% of the time I'd get it close. And I ended up building a pretty good business. And let's just summarize some of the troubles and the pros that I had that come straight to mind before I actually leave you with a dive bomb of a statement of what the next step is for me. So a couple of the operations of the business that I think that I needed to kind of assess a little bit more, and the only way that they did improve is because I was being aware of my business, which is step 3. Was one, obviously the pitch when it comes to it. 2 was I'm just trying to get them to really open up, really tell you why they want to lose weight, because there's normally a lot more to it of why they're coming in the first place. For all you know, they might kind of talk down how important it is that they work out. Maybe they said, my cholesterol is a little bit high. But if you really open up and you'd be like, oh, okay, like, who told you this? When did that happen? What did the doctor say? And really get to them to open up, you can find out that the doctor's actually been pretty serious and sincere if you need to do something before you have a heart attack. To that extent. But they're not going to tell you that out straight away, because most people don't open up that quickly. So one thing was working out keywords of how to do that. And I think just being very talkative, very open with myself to them to show my vulnerabilities was probably the biggest takeaway from improving that first section. So if you're a personal trainer, then maybe that'll help as well. So don't just keep asking and kind of interrogating them. Oh, why this? Why that? Why do you want to lose weight? Oh, you feel bad because your tummy sticks out? Why did that happen? Like, did you get embarrassed? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, interrogating them. Whereas, think about how you can interact as a human. Kind of tell them things about yourself, and then it will kind of reverse back. And they're probably the 2 biggest struggles that I have, or had for the first year as a personal trainer before I worked my whole systematic thing out by being more aware with my business. Now, the pros. Business was good, grew it up, and to my mind, I was going to push for the 6-figure mark, breakthrough there, which I knew it had it in me. But little did I know, on the sideline, caffeine addiction was growing and energy drinks to push through it, because I was fitting in so many sessions that I would work a block in the morning, have the afternoon here to go home and sleep because I was so destroyed from a big early morning 5 a.m. start, and then go back in the afternoon. But in order to get pumped for that second session, or second block, then I would have caffeine, and then it would keep me up sometimes, and it would only take one night through the week to go to no good. Oh, I don't want to swear for YouTube. And then I would get into this very big rut. And I started finding that all these good things were happening with the business. I had so much momentum. I was pushing to go to this goal that I had in mind, that my own health and my own training started to deteriorate. So I no longer cared about working out myself anymore, even though I was the biggest gym rat. And, I had to kind of assess my business again, going back to step 3, I guess it was. And see that, my passion for training, being in the gym all the time, has killed it for my own personal kind of benefit. And so it leads us to this point of where I'm actually slowly making the transition away from personal training, condensing my time in order to free up more endeavors that I want to try. And then I guess we're on to phase 3 of my own career and the steps that I've taken. And again, it's very exciting. It's probably the 3rd time I've done it now. I'm not cold quitting So, and I don't think I ever really will. So I don't have that like nervous feeling anymore. So it's just left with the excitement. And I can always make more videos on how I'm kind of doing that transition between full-time PT, was aiming for, you know, the most successful in the room, or in not in the state. There's probably heaps of good PTs, but you know what I mean, in the area, but then decided that it's probably not the most beneficial long-term success. And I'll leave you with that quote. Remember that short-term gain will always destroy a business over long-term success. Thanks heaps for watching, guys. Before you leave, if you found any part of this video helpful, then please do hit that like button down below. I know you hear it all the time, but it's support like that that really does show, like, give back to us, or back to YouTubers, because it helps us kind of be displayed to more people. YouTube prefers our channels because it shows that we do good. And also 99% of anyone that's ever watched any of my videos, and I have more than one channel, hasn't subscribed. And I've been really aware of this number lately, which is pretty disheartening. So if you were maybe interested at all or seeing any more videos coming out in the future, then please do hit that subscribe button and bell icon as well. Thanks guys, I will see you next time.